juice, the chocolate milk, the holy cow. I wear the Sikhs, tip up the beak, I'm a 33. Charles Manson, ranch dressing, goat heads with the number 9. It is so divine with the holy grail, shape of the snail, the Fibonacci, sound of the conch.
All right, we are live, June 9th, 2025. This is the IPS Evening Deprogram. Now, I'm saying deprogram, but the transcripts pick it up as deep program. And I assure you that I am not programming anybody here. Quite the opposite. We're really building up on the notion of being informed disbelievers as an alternative to low information belief. All right, so I had a slight, I don't know what you'd call it. I wouldn't even say it's a very significant event, but maybe it is. I don't know. I'm not paranoid, okay? But last night, at some point, somebody broke the bottom window here at the office. I have a north-facing window, and it's just no big deal. Nobody actually broke in. I mean, maybe it was an accident, but it looks like somebody knocked over one of these cement ashtray fixtures right into the window. Again, it could have been an accident. I mean, I'm not really sure, but if it was meant to send a message, nothing really got through because it wasn't all that significant. Nobody attempted to break in. However, you know, it's just worth pointing out because, well, the timing of it. You know, what are we talking about right now? Are we talking about something significant? But someone did note that maybe I should be careful as far as the possibility of things being tampered with, which is true. Somebody could come in here and get on my computer and contradict everything that I've said, hijack my Twitter account, or worse, plant something, some memes. But whatever the case, I'm not really sure. I haven't ruled out anything. Could just be a nothing. Could be a nothing burger. The 11th could be. You know, there's some conversation online right now about this, which we'll get into. You know, are we looking at a nothing burger? And my main point here is this. We're not in the business of guessing things based on mysterious Kabbalistic calculations from a gematria calculator. We're not doing Ouija boards. There's nothing random in our assessment. What we're doing here is we're examining history as it's being reported, as we live it, and as we're told that it's happening, but it's always secondhand. So like, this event happened according to these sources in this way. So we're looking at the construction of history itself without the presupposition that it's all random. And it doesn't mean everything's fake, but it does mean that a significant amount of our news is influenced by influence operations, psychological operations, and outright fakery simulations and lies. And when you think about the significance of it, well, you have to deal with the fact that these lies, fake news events, propaganda narratives that go into the official news become official history. Look at a history textbook, and you'll note that every major event happened just like it was reported on TV. So the television, the media, broadcast media at large, is treated as an objective source that's just reporting and reflecting history as it happens. And they can sort it out later, but these are the raw facts. And I'm saying that no, that's a bad assumption. And so we're moving forward without this bad assumption and understanding that news being faked is how they control time by controlling history. It only makes sense to assume or presume that they're writing it in advance to some extent. Every psyop is a scene in history that was written in advance and scripted. These crisis actors have lines. The whole thing is built on a script. So the question is, how far in advance do they write our news? 5 years? Like in newsbenders? 1,000 years? I would say both. Long-term and short-term. Now, 9/11 was preceded by copious examples of what is termed predictive programming, but a lot of the stuff was building up narratives for the public to accept the idea of a terror attack. They created the threat. There was a lot of, lead up to the date. I mean, look at like the lone gunman and others have been pointed out. There's many famous examples of what I'm describing here. But hindsight, you could say, okay, well, 9/11 was the destined date for this. In a similar way, we watched the buildup to March 11th, 2020, when the WHO declared it was a pandemic. We observed this knowing that we were looking at foreshadowing, predictive programming, and psychological operations. So on Sunday, I put out a live stream. World War III starts on Wednesday. And what happened on Wednesday? Pandemic was declared. That Friday was a Friday the 13th, as this one will be. And that's the date they declared a state of emergency. That Monday was a market crash, which they termed a Black Monday market crash, similar to the one in 1987. And here's another interesting example, because we're talking about repetition in history, like LA riots 33 years ago, and there's some people noticing this, but March 16th, 2020, Black Monday market crash, 33 years after the 87 market crash. But what's more, there was a TV show at the time, and it was called Black Monday. Black Monday is a show about the 87 market crash. Season 2 aired on March 16th, 2020. That's when it kicked off. So the season 2 of Black Monday kicks off on the second Black Monday, 33 years after the one the show takes place in. And the cast members even remarked that it was an eerie coincidence. Life follows art. Life follows Netflix. But my point is, we accurately ascertained that there was going to be an event centered in Seattle that would affect the whole world. It's the ground zero, and it was going to be on 3/11, World War III. And it did happen, but it wasn't what we thought it was. It was something different, but analogous in all the relevant ways. It was a ground zero epicenter, and everything did fundamentally change. So anyway, we're looking at a similar buildup to 6/11 and a scenario involving blackouts, EMPs, nukes, centered around Seattle. And the buildup has been pretty specific. I mean, specific to the point where we're watching movies like Final Destination that are specifically about the Space Needle and the opening night, and the real Space Needle opens up their Skyliner at the same time. So we're looking at what we always see, the hallmarks of an incoming psyop: predictive and concurrent programming, narrative buildup, no King Day. So again, in addition to this seeming buildup for a big catastrophe in a couple of days, Trump's going to be with Melania at the JFK Center, the Kennedy Center. So again, we always see the Kennedy and the headshot situation associated with the nuke scenario. Trump was shot at 6/11. Headshot, 6/11 nuke scenario. It's just a consistent pattern. Well, now we also have, as we speak, protesters in Los Angeles against ICE, against Trump. Trump threatens to arrest Gavin Newsom. Newsom calls him an authoritarian. And this buildup towards Trump as authoritarian goes back. We were talking about USDA. They put his picture on the front, and someone said, "This is just like an authoritarian." Big portraits of himself next to Lincoln, which ties into something else, because Final Destination, the Space Needle, is brought down by a penny. And the penny, of course, has Lincoln on it, and associated with this would be Civil War, Class War, Daniel Penny. Anyway, significant buildups all around here. Jamarian May says Trump was shot at 6:11 and 33 seconds. Exactly. Now, Trump's birthday, 6/14, is also the 250th anniversary of the military. It's Flag Day. So now we have another significant date at the end of the week. And in addition to this military parade, there are going to be nationwide protests, a quote, day of defiance. No King's Day. And I looked at the advertisement. It has Trump's profile with the crown and an X through the crown. But killing of the king is this theme attached to the JFK assassination. And we've already discussed and alluded to the well-established connections between the JFK assassination and the Lincoln assassination. And all of the alignments between these two presidents that are exactly 100 years apart. So the Century Project, the 100 million, and the Space Needle, it's all part of the same apparent code. So what I'm suggesting here is that just as people have retroactively decoded 9/11, and again, it goes into nuance, like even with 3/11. We look into things like Colony Season 3, Episode 11, Seattle, Ground Zero for the reboot of civilization, or The Office, Season 3, Episode 10, about a flu and people wearing masks. So it's pretty much the case here that we're looking at this as a model that has some inherent predictability. And just following the script, we're attempting to more or less guess the next twist. And our analysis has been consistently pointing to, right now, this Seattle situation. And there's some overlap. So Jamarian May mentions Rodney King. Well, we just had the Terrence Nichols event, and those officers were exonerated, and that was a Rodney King thing. Then we had Rodney Hinton Jr., who killed the cop who was born on 6/11 and served 33 years. Again, 6/11-33, what's that combination? What is that trying to convey here? McVeigh's death, 33 years of age, 6/11. Trump shot, 6/11-33. This guy killed by the Rodney Hinton, 6/11-33. The guy who wrote the Turner Diaries was born on 9/11, 1933, and the Turner Diaries is all about Waco. I mean, it's not about Waco, but it's attached to this Waco theme. You see, the Timothy McVeigh was radicalized at Waco, as was Alex Jones. And this is where the story of this white nationalist uprising takes place. And it seems to be the case that they've reintroduced this idea, and it's been platformed through conservative groups like Turning Point USA. But the Turner Diaries is this doomsday scenario where white nationalists, called the organization, essentially 9/11 America. And what we're looking at here is the 6/11 scenario being attached to Seattle and the Space Needle. And it does align in significant ways. We talked about the white Al-Qaeda called the Base. And a lot of these groups have been openly talking about shutting down the power grid. In fact, there was this article about how this white nationalist group is using AI in order to learn how to attack the power grid. Now, again, just a quick recap here. I watch the trailers before I watch movies because they often contain contiguous propaganda messaging. And right before you see the Space Needle destroyed in Final Destination, they have a trailer for Fantastic Four. So Fantastic Four has an explosion above a city, EMP, everything going black. And then the Space Needle explodes. And then we have the Fantastic Four in Empire magazine. So you have Fantastic Four and EMP with the Space Needle right over the P. And this is, Verk Junk says Trump eliminated the penny. Yes, all of this is relevant. I mean, I was just talking about Trump at the Kennedy Center posing with the big Kennedy bust right behind his head, so he looks like JFK. And he's holding out his hands like he's got stigmata and his palms are red. But he's going to be at the JFK Center on the 11th. But I'm not trying to make the case that that date has to be, but I'm just saying it would be on brand, consistent, and I wouldn't be surprised. And just recently I found out that the Space Needle was declared a historic landmark on 4/19/1999. So 4/19, Branch Davidians burn 33-year-old Dave Koresh. 4/19, retaliation, McVeigh bombs the Oklahoma City or the Oklahoma City government building, and of course, fertilizer is a big part of that story, which we'll get into today, because there's fertilizer on the world stage, some kind of analogous attack being possibly planned. But on 4/19, Trump was he's on trial, and Maxwell Azarello sets himself on fire outside. And that particular event we've analyzed ad nauseum, but my point is the date 4/19 corresponds really to this white nationalist attack. And so for the Space Needle to be associated with that date is just, again, very consistent here. Walter Walking says the cops kissed Rodney King on the lips. The cops, if you look at Wikipedia, they say they swung like 56 times, but 33 times they actually hit Rodney King. And the Terry Nichols event was like the Rodney King in the way that it was filmed. And there's a connection between the Rodney King beating and Terminator 2, which we won't get into now. We talked about that yesterday. But the attack happened over the course of 1 minute and 19 seconds. So it has all the same consistent code. Now, there's a video out where somebody is referencing Elvis and Trump and 6/11. I'm not going to play it because he's one of these finger waggers. And I'm really tired of these like soy jack looking guys where they can't explain a conspiracy without getting all bug-eyed and finger-waggy in front of the screen. It used to annoy me when I'd be watching TV and somebody would stand in front of the screen, like oblivious to how rude that is. And I feel like they're trying to get attention. So I couldn't watch this video, but as expected, there are a lot of people who are suddenly cognizant of 6/11 being a significant date. And this guy at least gave Jurassic Liars credit. I tried to watch the video. It's called Revelation. And it has Elvis and Trump. I'll play a few seconds of it, but I have very low tolerance for finger wagging. The channel is The Fit Flat Earther. Or The Fittest Flat Earther. Okay, here it is.
So I had to pray on this one. And when you see the answer I got back, I don't think there's going to be any doubt that I'm doing what I'm supposed to. You see, there's a gentleman on the YT platform who has been warning about the coming June 11th for a long time. And he has come up with a lot of predictive programming and numbers.
Okay, good. I'm glad he starts out talking about Jurassic Liars, and here he has the profile of Elvis next to Washington State. Jamarian May says, I despise his voice. I'm mostly critical of the finger wagging and other things with this whole format, but let's listen in a little bit more to see what he has to say. The dramatic music is cringe, definitely. It's not even cringe-retaining. It's unnecessary and unserious, but let's listen.
To show that something drastic might be coming on June 11th. And it all has to do with the state of Washington. And as you can see here, his proposal or prediction is that there is going to be massive flooding, and it is going to leave the state of Washington looking like Elvis. And what you can see here is it's in the shape of Elvis. And I believe what he is saying is that literally only the shape of Elvis is going to be left, and the rest is...
Now, I've never heard it explained in that way, that it's going to flood with the shape of Elvis, but whatever. Lean Dion says this guy is one of the worst. LOL. His hat for the longest just said ice wall. Stuart McKenzie says he's buddies with... Okay, well, I'm not going to really expound on that, guilt by association, although I could, because it does seem like certain entities move in packs. But let's, again, follow along. What is the purpose of this, and why now? This is the thing that I find interesting about it, is that he could have talked about this a month ago. He said, oh, he just prayed about it and he got the answer. Yeah, I'm sure. Like God's like ChatGPT for this person, and he's just responsive, and, oh, by the way, this is true. Like, I don't know. I don't think God told him to do this. If he thought this was legitimate, why didn't he mention it a month ago? Why the night before? And I bring this up because these are big channels, and it's just like, are these big channels hijacking anything in advance? But at least he's directing it to the source, I suppose. But let's continue, because maybe this isn't bad.
It's going to be massively flooded, especially around Seattle. So here's his account on the YT, and I didn't even notice that I captured this at 11:11 until right now. But I'm not a fearmonger guy, but I want to show you his stuff and let you know what he talks about, just in case you want to hear for yourself. And here he is.
All right.
Now, let me first start out by saying he is the only other person that creates content that I have ever seen that draws a comparison of you-know-who with you-know-who, kind of like I do. Only he doesn't think they're the same person. He draws a connection that one is...
So this guy thinks Elvis is Trump. Today there was something in the news. I probably marked it even. I'm pretty sure I must have. Yeah. So, Patriot Takes is an anti-Trump Twitter account, and they're showing Trump's leg. And so he's got his foot kind of twisted in. And I don't know. They're always like harping on their political enemies like they did for Biden. But I noticed it's kind of like the Elvis leg. Like Elvis was always twisting his leg like that. I'm not saying this is proof that Trump is Elvis. I just noticed that today. Okay, so he's talking about Trump being literally Elvis again. Is there a case that can be made? You know what? A few years ago, there was a very good video suggesting that John Candy came back as Donald Trump. And if you take select pictures, the right angles, you can make the case, and it's not enough. You gotta go deeper. But you also have to look for inconsistencies. I don't know where to go with this very much. Jamarian says this guy's ripped off JL's work for months. Well, there are a lot of people who will jump on August 4th, and I'll say, how did you arrive at this date? And they'll say, my gematria calculator told me. Like, no, I'm pretty sure you're harvesting content.
Is a false representation of Jesus, and I believe the other is a false representation of the Antichrist. But he doesn't draw the comparison that I do, that just says that they're both the same, and one faked his death and became the other. I've proven that a lot with facial markings, especially around here, and I'll show you later. But here's what I want to show you about me praying on it. First, I just happened to wake up this morning and check the weather in that area, and what I found is that there are two tropical storms converging with each other, heading up.
All right. So I'm going to kind of skip through. The music's a little overdone. I want to see if we've missed anything. Revelation 9:11. I'm going to just go ahead and post a link to this. Statue of Liberty, Lucifer. Now, this holds water with me. Statue of Liberty is made of copper, which is associated with Venus, which is Lucifer. Like, you could make that case, and you could make the case that Elvis's visage does look like the Statue of Liberty. What does this mean? Well, and this is something that JL even suggests here, is that Elvis, the image, the archetype, the Phoenix stuff, that what you're really seeing here is a representative of Lucifer, basically, or Satan. And these are all conflated in a very simplistic way, but that's how it works. The world stage loves syncretism and mashing things up. Lord Laney says, I was thinking earlier about symbolism, the numbers themselves, 611, 611, the two pillars are the pillars of Jack and Boaz, perhaps, but what is the 6 or 9, like spherical something with a swoop? Yeah, that is interesting. I thought about that too, because what we have seen is the consistent use of 911, 119, 611, 116, but their meanings are consistent, even though these are used pretty much interchangeably. The obsession with numbers as also representing letters, this is all stuff that is just part and parcel of the more occult and ritualistic side of things, but it's there. And my take on the 611 thing, which we've talked about the various ways it's been associated with right-wing domestic violent terrorism, my take on it too is that being the inverted 9/11, it really does correspond to the idea of a white Al-Qaeda, which emerged in 2018, called the base, which is what Al-Qaeda means. Hark says Elvis would be 90 or no. Right. The age of the real Elvis, could he be Trump? Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so. Although John Candy, my point of bringing that up is that you could kind of make the case for anything. Let's see what else we have here. I want to play a few more clips. Here he is pointing at a picture of Elvis and Trump side by side.
See it in their hair. You can see it in their symmetry, even down to their little facial marking. I mean, it's a perfect.
There are also people who think that Trump is JFK. It's very convoluted, and I hate giving too much attention to this, especially when these are people who don't know the news is fake. But he is going down this path of Elvis, Revelation 9/11, Angel of the Abyss. I mean, there is something here that he is tapping into here. Because Trump, the world stage character, has been attached. A lot of things have been attached to him. The Biff Tannen stage that he's in right now is pretty apparent. But this Antichrist, this like for example, Damian Thorne, DT, Donald Trump, that's been talked about quite a bit. Devil's Advocate was filmed in Trump's penthouse. So Trump has been associated with the devil in many ways, with the Revelation 9/11 Angel over the Abyss, Destroyer, Apollyon, Abaddon. It's a part of his personage. It's kind of interesting how he's been both turned into a devil and also turned into Christ. Like he's been deified, apotheosis. He's been compared to Christ for some time, or he's been assigned by God. So it's one or the other. And the deadly head wound thing, the Revelation 13 story was before Butler. QAnoner said something's going to be biblical. It's going to go down. And they said, yes, that Revelation 13 happened when JFK was shot in the head. And he survived. So JFK is alive, and he is the second coming of Christ. So they kind of worship this biblical antichrist narrative, but thinking it's Christ. And they say, it's because the deep state edited the Bible. They twisted it. So they kind of worship, ironically, the QAnoners essentially worship a character that they would associate with the Antichrist if they were looking at it from a more mainstream lens.
On it in something very large coming on 6/11, and we know how they like their 9/11, their 9/11 Revelation 9/11, kind of like how Elvis's brother had a revelation in Garo's account.
Okay, so let's move on. I think that's enough of his channel for now. I put a link below if you want to check it out. Kind of a simplistic take, and this isn't the entirety of it, but he got the gist of it as far as the date and something in Seattle. He didn't mention the Space Needle. No big deal. All right, let's continue. Dr. Back Assword says, wasn't Trump also the Keck frog? Yes. Oh, yes, definitely. He's been mythologized. He was Emperor King Trump. He's been painted up as George Washington. But this is not a new thing. It's been going on since the beginning of Trump. The left is planning to rise up across the country on June 14th, again, Trump's birthday. They call it the Nationwide Day of Defiance. So again, just to kind of reiterate, we got Friday the 13th, following the 6/11, and the day of Trump's birthday, there's going to be nationwide protests, no kings. I wouldn't want to be a Cybertruck owner right now. The No Kings movement is targeting Musk and Trump, but just kind of as a comparison, leading up to 3/11, because we're kind of looking at this through the same frame, it was a Wednesday, and then we had the national emergency declared on that Friday the 13th, and then the market crashed on that Monday. So we're kind of seeing a similar trajectory here. Things are heating up right now. And Saturday, at a minimum, Saturday, there's going to be a major uptick of mass participation. But even as we speak, stuff is happening in Los Angeles. Trump is sending the troops. He's being branded an authoritarian. And last night, I was talking to Fakeologist, and we played a clip from 0 Day. And in 0 Day, they compare the former president in that one to being a tyrant. So he's a tyrant, and they are kidnapping people with no warrants, civil rights abuses. Well, right now, the reason for the riots in Los Angeles is the ICE going after immigrants and deporting them. But this is looked at from their side, of course, as human rights abuse. And, of course, bringing out the military is seen by some as being egregious, maybe just perhaps a flex. And then his birthday and the military parade coming up, that's something that the North Korean dictator would do. I mean, it's just a coincidence he was born on Flag Day, but the optics of it. Truman B3000 says, government LARPs have been activated, made for TV riots, wonder who's directing this round. Lean Dion says 33 years since the 92 riots. Enex says, Google just released a new AI model called Kingfall. Violet says, anti-defiance spending petition stalls at 611 signatures. It connects to the Russian threats of nukes. I'd say it's scripted number there. Yeah, these numbers are arbitrary, and 116, 611, both of them are associated with the nukes and the domestic violent extremist thing. And the Turner Diaries, which I was getting to earlier, is about the white nationalist group getting their hands on the nuke. And there have been 32 Broken Arrow incidents, so we're waiting on the 33rd. What's up, Marcel? Thank you for joining. So we're looking at, again, 2 months ago, if we were going to talk about 6/11, there wasn't a lot going on. There was this buildup of race war narratives, the kind of proxy race war with the whole Shiloh Hendrix versus Carmelo Anthony, and the movie Sinners, where the protagonist kills the Klansman in a mass shooting. Like, there was some buildup here. But it has significantly ramped up really since the Final Destination movie comes out, the Space Needle blows up, Musk and Trump breaking up. We have the movie Mountainhead about Musk, obviously, and others, and about AI sowing chaos. And after that movie comes out, which is these individuals hiding out in this cabin while the world plunges into chaos, cities on fire, riots, that's happening right now. That stuff kicked off after Mountainhead. And Mountainhead also has a scene or scenes reminiscent of the public breakup of Musk and Trump. So I consider that to be concurrent programming. Like, hey, based on this movie Mountainhead, it makes sense that these two are breaking up publicly, but where's the riots? Where's the chaos? Well, there it is. Didn't take long for Life Again to imitate Netflix. Thank you very much, Marcel. Marcel has jumped in with a box of titanium blue wrenches. Dr. Bass Ackwards, Matt X, Lowry, G Money, Austin Murphy, Psyop Sidecar have all received the Blue Wrench membership gift. Enoch says June 11th might coincide with the U.S. debt clock hitting 37 trill, 3 sevens, or 777. Well, when you get into the numbers, you can find stuff that's just beyond coincidence. Like, it's not a coincidence that Godzilla was born on November the 3rd. Godzilla 11.3, this beast of the sea, the nuking of Seattle. Godzilla as a metaphor for the nuke. It's actually quite integrated. And then if you really want to go deeper into the numbers, which I don't right now, but 37, you get, of course, 73, which is 1 minute and 13 seconds, 113, the timestamp at which the space shuttle blew up. The 113th shuttle was Columbia, which also blew up. But there's a consistent pattern and a story that's extracted from this, which the public experiences as history, and they think it's random. But what we experience as history is a construct, and the script is what we're talking about. And the script, the meta script, is the information propaganda, which people could call news, and the entertainment propaganda. And these are all coming from the same source, or influenced, directed, or serving the interests of the same entity, the same monolithic entity. Hark says, I couldn't sit through Mountainhead. Believe me, I tried. When I watch these movies that I know contain relevant predictive programming, I sit there with a notebook and I just take notes. And this Mountainhead movie is 100% concurrent programming. It's based on Musk. They even make fun of Musk's relationship with his children, the baby's mamas. It's Musk, Zuckerberg, Sam Altman, and there's someone else in there I'm trying to identify. It might be a mashup of a couple of different characters. But what you have is the story of generative AI causing chaos and riots because people can't tell real from fake. And the irresponsible techno bros decide that they want to basically take over the world. And in one scene, the Musk character is about to get on the phone with the president. And he's like, oh, he's just a dude, kind of talks down the relationship. And what we saw, though, the public spat between Musk and Trump was foreshadowed in the movie, as is the chaos, which is starting to play out right now. New Superman 711. Well, this 611 thing has other elements to it. So, for example, the space station is no longer going to be trackable on the NASA website. They're cutting that part off. When? On 611. The episode of The 100 where the space station explodes aired on 611. And it was season 1, episode 13, 113 and 611. Just this pattern is it's not unbelievable. I mean, if I didn't know any better, I would say we live in a simulation. And I would say that these are evidences of some higher power orchestrating events, and life is some kind of video game. Like, you wouldn't be able to accept reality as real with all these endless, meaningful alignments and coincidences seemingly telling a story. And a lot of people defaulted to that explanation that this is so mind-blowing, it must be higher than man powers. Higher than man. It's kind of a mantra with the synchromystics. Man couldn't do this. Oh, really? I mean, it's no more complicated than any influence operation or marketing in general, guerrilla marketing. Look at the various guerrilla marketing strategies employed over the years. Indirect marketing. It's all indirect. It's practically subliminal, but these influence operations, influencers, they're everywhere. It's all about influencing your perceptions and opinions and buying decisions. The notion that the news media is fakeable and they're always manipulating it, but that somehow the movies are just organic expressions of creativity, that's naive. And we've already destroyed that whole notion, especially when you recognize that not only are the fake news events attended by parallels in the entertainment world, but they're also concurrent with drills. Drills. Like the helicopter hitting the plane, or the plane hitting the helicopter. Yeah, that was done during a continuity of government drill, a hypothetical situation for a doomsday where they have to evacuate VIPs. That was a drill when it happened. And the reason why the right-wingers blamed the female pilot and the lefties blamed Musk and Trump's cuts to the FAA is because they were conditioned through consistent programming in this war to interpret things in these very simplistic ways. That's the purpose. The reason why we're being shown in many movies examples of blackouts, of some kind of calamity that involves domestic terrorists and Russia in some way, and something else too. So the base, again, Al-Qaeda means the base, white nationalist group, was founded by somebody from the Pentagon. And it turns out that this person is 100% connected with Russia, which fits in with the whole idea here that has been promoted in the entertainment. And my point is, when it happens, nobody's going to dispute it. They're just going to say, oh, it's because of X and Elon Musk. They let the madness loose. They released the Kraken when they stopped censoring right-wing hate, and look what happened. So on the one hand, the left is going to interpret it in that way, and the right will interpret it some other way, but they're not going to dispute that it is a real event. Going through your comments, New Edge Design says, it's Cambridge Analytics type programs looping facts, theories, dates in our face constantly. Well, what really clued me into this thing was 2020 mirroring 1968, almost headline for headline. And the timestamps. Like when I started noticing, wait a minute here, why are they emphasizing 846? I'm like, wait, Twin Cities, 846, that kind of rings a bell. Twin Towers, first attack, 846. So I'm thinking this number has got some significance. The sun set in the Twin Cities at 846. And so if you follow just the numbers, it does reveal something about the structure and its alignment with the astronomical, the astrological alignments. It ties in a number of facets, but my point is the symbolism tells another story that bolsters the main story. It gives a level of subtext to it. So, for example, the George Floyd event. Left says he was killed by systemic racism and by a cop and this class warfare, defending the rich and victimizing the oppressed by killing him like this. It was a lynching. The right wing says, no, the cops are protecting us from the poor, from the drug users, the criminal elements. And so you have this class warfare narrative, oppressor, oppressed, and people have to take sides. So it's a story in addition to everything else about it. But the main thing is, what is the messaging behind this entire story? But the surface level, of course, is he was killed by this, or the other side, he was killed because Biden opened the borders, fentanyl got in, and he died from a fentanyl overdose. So anyway, they can fight over the causes of it. But it creates this clash between this progressive utopianism and traditional or nationalism, but it creates this clash, and that was the whole point of it. But at the subtextual level, you also have his death, 846, connecting to the timing of the sun setting. And when you get into the mythology of the killing of the king or the killing of Osiris, the sunset represents the symbolic dismembering of the sun king. So the sunset is associated with his death when the Lord of Darkness, Saturn, or Set, Prince of Darkness, overcomes the day. The dismembered god is symbolized by the obelisk, the symbol of his resurrection. So the George Floyd's death, corresponding to the setting of the sun, has the elements of the myth of Osiris, who in some myths is suffocated. I can't breathe, I can't breathe. And they had 4 funerals for him, if you remember, with golden caskets. So there were some elements of the story that just seemed to be a little ritualistic and scripted to convey a different set of messages. But nothing about it was flippant. It's all entirely a story. The twin stuff was apparent right at the front. They were emphasizing twins for some reason. The names tell another part of the story. We have the Derek Chauvin. The name Derek comes from a hangman. And the Proud Boys were representing the opposition to BLM. Proud Boys, like Kyle Rittenhouse, was initiated into the Proud Boys. And the Proud Boys call themselves Proud Chauvinists, Western Chauvinists. Derek Chauvinist is what I call him. Derek Western Chauvinist. The hangman for the Western Chauvinist. He was actually asphyxiating, but the name hangman implies lynching. So if you look at the symbolism and the setup of the event, it represented a living example, a perfect representation of the oppressor-oppressed dynamic playing out in front of us. Lean Dion says the golden caskets were a standout. Yeah, there are so many elements to this we could get into. The first pictures you saw of George Floyd, remember he was standing in front of that COVID poster, holding it looked like a COVID on it, but he was holding a Corona. But there were too many holes in that story to take it at face value for anything other than a psyop. But the 9/11 connections, I guess, is what I was kind of getting into with that one. The riots were kicking off shortly after that. One of the first places they burned happened to be a factory that made hyper-realistic training dolls that simulated patients in respiratory distress. Like you could go down to this factory in the Twin Cities and buy a George Floyd training dummy that can't breathe, that you can intubate. Inside the ambulance footage of George Floyd, where they were trying to jumpstart his heart, that was a big floppy rubber doll, in my opinion. I did an article, I should go bring it, I should repost it. It was about crisis dolls. The simulation training dolls that they have, like fake dead children or dying children, casualties, patients that talk. The eyes move, that bleed. Lean Dion says Mercury rising. Yeah, 8:46 a.m. Mercury rising, 9/11/2001. First plane hits the building. There was a movie called Mercury Rising with Bruce. Let me bring this one up actually, because it's Bruce Willis. Well, it's Bruce Willis. What's the kid's name from Sixth Sense? No, from that Stephen King movie, Pet Sematary. Miko Hughes. So Miko Hughes, he plays the dead kid Gage in Stephen King's movie Pet Sematary. Well, he's also in a movie called Mercury Rising. And Mercury Rising is about this savant, this little kid, who's able to crack codes, and he becomes a national security threat. Now, Mercury Rising, this is all intriguing to me because, again, Mercury Rising is about this savant child who's able to decode classified information he sees through codes or something. But Mercury Rising, 8:46 a.m., 9/11 kicks off. That actor's father died at 8:46 a.m. because he was in the World Trade Tower, if you believe it. Well, that's an interesting connection. One of many, but Jamarian May says the entire world is an insane asylum. True. Absolutely. And it's managed by the programmers. You're programmed by default. There's no unprogrammed person. The best you can do is being uninformed, but it doesn't matter. Because the shared backdrop of history is what frames our collective frame of reference, whether you're aware of it or not. Being ignorant of it doesn't change the fact that that's our shared consensus. And if you're not studying it and examining where it might be fake, then you're in no place to discredit it or debunk it in your own mind or in any significant way. So being uninformed is not a defense against the misinformation floods. The only option is to be misinformed or to be informed. And being informed simply means that you know it's misinformation. But the majority of people in the insane asylum are unaware of the fact that they're given misinformation. And that's not hyperbole. I can demonstrate this quite easily. The very fact that the fake news never gets corrected, it steers the dominant narratives. These influence operations are what give the media the ability to curate our shared experience. It shows they bend our history day by day. Fake news never gets corrected. All the fake stuff goes into the textbooks. It's carved into stone. And you can't fix it from within. You can't fix the Truman Show. We're not the script writers. What you can do, what we have done, is you can exit the Truman Show and maintain your frame of reference being the skeptical, subtractive view where we're very much agnostic about what they claim to believe or what they're really incensed about, what they're reacting to. I don't doubt that people believe this stuff, and I understand what they believe. I don't believe it because I have reasons not to. And they are unaware of these reasons because they get their information from their chosen sources that have a vested interest in keeping people in the dark. If you're not looking at the nightly news with awareness of psychological operations, street theater, staged riots, January 6th was a staged riot. Nobody died. If you can't process that, you're in the box. You're in the Truman Show. It's just the fact. If you can't conceptualize a psychological operation on that scale where thousands of actors are involved, then you're not going to be able to see out of it. You're not going to see the forest for the trees. You're underestimating the power of mass media to create mass delusion. And you're also underestimating the number of sellouts and liars. That's hard for people to accept. And you might think, some people thought, hey, this was a setup, it was a sting. Trump was, he was done wrong here, betrayed. No, none of this can be true. Now that we know that Trump was part of the staged Butler psyop and he actually had to participate, there's no way you can give him plausible deniability. You cannot exonerate him. He's been a part of the psyop entertainment complex from the beginning. Hark says, interesting that the series 1899 had many references to black goo, which was the whole carbon nanotubes symbology. Now, I didn't see the other one I started to. There's something called Dark, and Dark and 1899 seem to be connected somehow. Dark is the one about this portal and time travel that happens to happen in 33-year increments. I mean, there's some fascinating trails to go down when you look at these numbers, because these numbers are not only connecting major psyops on the world stage, but they're in the movies. And the messaging, the meaning is consistent. Like, I'm not into the gematria, like this number means this, or these two words add to the same, so they mean this. But you can look at it as simply as ciphers and the deliberate use of symbolism and code. And the code is very consistent. So let's see here. We're talking about 6/11, 6/14, Flag Day. Now, Flag Day, 6/14, Trump's birthday. There's quite a lot we could unpack here. 6/14 was the birthday of one of the persons that was shot by Alec Baldwin, who frequently portrayed Trump. 6/14 connects to the sinking of not really the sinking of the Titanic, but indirectly. But 6/14 is in the movie Don't Look Up, where the comet's going to hit the Earth in 6 months and 14 days. And so I thought that could be alluding to Flag Day, Trump's birthday. And this comet is, a ball of ice hitting the Earth. But the movie was starring Leonardo DiCaprio, face of the Titanic. And so it's a pretty clear analogy. Climate change as the iceberg hitting the Titanic of the West, sinking the world, or the comet hitting the globe, and the greedy Steve Jobs-like character wants to mine the comet instead of diverting it, killing us all. So they tell these stories repeatedly, but 614 was encoded into that one. So it was kind of interesting to see that Alec Baldwin shoots the 42-year-old and the director who survived, who has the birthday 614, and he frequently portrays Trump. He's connected to the 42-year-old because she's from the place in Ukraine that relates to Hunt for Red October, which Alec Baldwin was in. Hunt for Red October is a movie about a missing or a nuclear submarine. And it's a Tom Clancy. And Tom Clancy's books are very well known for their prescience. Sum of All Fears was 9/11 in many ways. There was an astronaut in the ISS on 9/11 who said he was listening to Tom Clancy's Sum of All Fears on an audiobook, and he looks down and he sees 9/11 happening, and he says, wow, this is just like the Tom Clancy book. I mean, it's a ludicrous lie. I'll play it. I'll bring that video up. I'll do a separate video on that one. Just, it's worth going over. But my point here, Tom Clancy, Hunt for Red October, is kind of in the subtext between Alec Baldwin and Helena Hutchins and Joel Sousa, who gets shot on the set of Rust, which is a Western. So the West and the Western, sinking of the West, the Titanic as the West, Earth as Titanic and Don't Look Up. It's a consistent theme here. Again, the sinking of the West. Westworld had this similar thing, EMP, blackout-like situation, riots. Westworld contained copious 311 predictive programming, very specific stuff. And it's Christopher Nolan, Jonathan Nolan. The Nolans are always attached to these movies that are heavily representative. Their movies are heavily representative in the psyops. And Jonathan Nolan did Oppenheimer, got the Batman movies. Christopher Nolan, and then Jonathan did the, not just Westworld, but Fallout. Fallout, another nuke situation. Post-nuke apocalypse. But Rust was a Western, and the shooting took place in a chapel, which is what stood out to me. Because they used the symbol of the chapel in that movie getting hit. I think it might represent the White House. And then you had the White Chapel in Westworld that burned. So it's like there was this theme at the time of associating the West with this house. And then at the same time, this is 2022 when Westworld comes out, Kanye West started his very public fall from grace. And I said, watch. Kanye West, or Ye, is going to embody certain aspects of the West that maybe justify it being taken down. The whole Kardashian thing, perhaps as he described, his family was being torn apart by Hollywood, by porn. In other words, Western values. And then he does this thing called Dawn Day. He has this big event where he burns a house that represents his childhood house. And someone asked him what did the house mean, and he kind of alluded to the statement that Martin Luther King said about how we're going back into a burning house. Like, you can't integrate into this broken system. It's systemically screwed. It needs to be replaced. So the burning house thing was significant for a few reasons, because it corresponded to these other burning houses and chapels, but also he happened to do the Burning Man himself. He came out of the thing on fire. And this happened to be on the date that we would have had Burning Man in Black Rock City, Nevada, but it was canceled because of COVID. Interestingly, there were 33 Burning Mans from 1986 to 2019. And at the last one in 2019, the 33rd Burning Man, a 33-year-old died and was there for some reason. It was in the news. 33-year-old died in Black Rock. So we started noticing a lot of Black Rock stuff. This is before 2020. Black Rock City, in conjunction with the Burning Man, which is kind of a phoenix symbol. But what would have been Burning Man number 34 that same day was Ye coming out on fire with his burning house. And then he did the second installment on 2/22/2022. And that's the date that Pluto was back to like 27 degrees Capricorn, the exact place it was when America was founded on Independence Day, July 4th, 1776. And the significance here was simply that they say that when Pluto returns, the empire falls, that most empires fall at this point. So it's kind of interesting that he does this burning house on that very date. So you have America's birth date, July 4th, 1776. So that would be a symbolic death date, 2/22/2022. And there's so much more. That whole month, by the way, the second month of 2022 was just full of uses of numbers that were reiterating this theme. Not to mention this theme of the Kraken. And of course, the Seattle Kraken, their symbolism has the Kraken over the Space Needle. And their trailer that they released, and this is before the 2020 election, the Seattle Kraken, the 32nd team of the NHL, released this trailer. It is 1 minute, 13 seconds long. So 113 again, right outside of Seattle, and it looks like an EMP. Big storm, lightning, Seattle getting flooded. And then the logo, the anchor, Space Needle, the Kraken. Jamarian says, the QAnon crowd is saying Trump is putting military on the ground for 614 as part of a deep state takedown. Interesting take. I saw one of the trains that have all the tanks on it. It said hang Fauci and who was the other person? Couldn't be Klaus Schwab, because Klaus Schwab stepped down on the same day that the Pope stepped down. Again, the significance there. You got two 88-year-olds, same archetype basically. They look the same type of person as far as like the figureheads. Figurehead of the Vatican, symbolic, essentially world-spanning organization, and then you have head of the World Economic Forum. So the Pope, as many have noted, there's a lot of 666 symbolism, in the tiara thing. There's a lot of 666s with the Pope. And I've noted a lot of 666 connected with the sun worship thing. But my point is, the Pope, symbolic leader, 88, steps down. I mean, dies, but steps down. Same day, World Economic Forum, their logo, the WEF logo, has a pretty obvious 666 built into it. In fact, let me go ahead and bring that up in case you are wondering what I'm talking about. So you see WEF, and it has what looks like a corona significantly, or a sun, and it's going through the three O's. So you got the circle, the line, so it already looks like a 666. O is also the 15th letter, 51666. So you see these two figures, and then Klaus Schwab comes out in his black papal robes, his Darth Vader costume, and then the Pope with the white. And so one is like the, religious head of the world. The other one is the more secular, but they're just symbolic figureheads stepping down at the same time at the same age, 88. Now, what does that mean? Don't know, but it tied into a lot of other things going on at the time related to a theme of twins and otherwise. Starboy Devoid says, Saturn Films presents an FBI empath busting a Manson-like creep who manipulates frequencies to control the minds of families by infiltrating their homes with a Trojan horse porcelain doll that emanates satanic magic. Probably really happening. I made the case here. In fact, I need to do some members-only videos, and I've been trying to come up with some ideas. So let me go ahead and put this down. I have to do one on this. But, Barbie. I'm able to make the case, in my opinion here, that Barbie is the Barbie doll, because you talk about satanic magic and dolls. Barbie is the New Age goddess as envisioned by the OTO. And they transition their gods from Isis and Osiris into Babylon and the Beast. So this is part of their new terminology and symbolism. This was why the Babylon working was called the Babylon working. Jack Parsons was the beast. Marjorie Cameron was the Babylon, which is the representative of the goddess, Isis, the new version of the goddess. And Barbie is I call her, she's basically Babylon, the goddess, but it's idol magic. They're putting these into the hands of the children. These things are going into all the homes. And if you didn't see the Barbie movie, I watched it to do the breakdown of it, the symbolism of it. It opens up with Stanley Kubrick's monolith theme. So already it has a very significant symbol in the monolith and what that represents. But instead of a monolith, it's a giant Barbie in a black and white bikini. And she's raising her glasses and winking, so the one eye symbolism. And she's looking at these girls playing with dolls. And the narrator is talking about how motherhood is drudgery and you should just be free of the nuclear family and these imposed roles. So these little girls start bashing the heads of their babies on the rocks. So infanticide, sacrificing their babies so they could live like Barbie. And the whole Barbie land and the portal from Barbie land into the real world, that's actually the whole purpose of the Babylon working. It was about opening a portal. And of course, Babylon means gates of the gods. And we're talking about gates, portals. And the movie has an esoteric level to it that is definitely consistent with New Age thought, New Age philosophy, specifically the stuff that Corelli was into and Jack Parsons. And it's certainly not stuff that should be marketed to children. There's a reason, if you haven't seen the Barbie movie, at the end she becomes a real woman. In fact, the very last word in the movie is gynecologist because she requests one. Meanwhile, Ken remains a doll because males are declared to be superfluous in this new age. But my point is, Barbie represents this new version of the goddess, and they were introducing it in this movie, in a comedy, but it contains these occult subtexts about the transformation of the world by fundamentally transforming how man sees himself or themselves as, like, for example, as we go into the new age, they're engaging what you'd call iconoclasm. I mean, when you look at the left or the movies and people say, oh, it's all the satanic stuff, it's not really that they worship Satan, or that they hate Christianity, but it's iconoclasm. It's all about destroying these old structures. That's part of their phoenix symbolism. Hark says, if this isn't a Louch farm, as the Gnostics have suggested, what would be the ideal and most equitable system for man to live the pursuit of happiness over? Anyone have any ideas? I think it's a Louch farm. Sorry. What convinced me, there's a few things that have convinced me. And when I say Louch farm, we're talking about, we're not here for anything other than to be matrix batteries. That's like probably true. Matrix batteries, but looking into the magical systems, and specifically John Dee and the Black Mirror, and I look at the iPhone every time I think about this stuff. And the idea that when you're interfacing with it, you're giving it your attention, your concentration, energy, emotional energy. There is an energetic exchange. And if you look at the theory and practice of magic, idol magic in particular, a lot of it involves this premise that the focused attention of the perceiver is actually giving life, feeding life into whatever it's focused on. That's the theory behind idol magic, sigil magic. I've read some traditions on idol magic where they create these dolls and they breathe into the mouths. Very elaborate rituals. When you look at various like Santeria or various traditions in Africa, or even Native American, like these Kachina dolls. These dolls are not toys. These are things made by the priesthood under the presupposition that they are embodying genie loci, a spirit. But that the spirit is coaxed into it, but it's given life by the creator. Sort of like God breathing into the mud or something. There's this notion of inanimate matter housing sentience if it's constructed in a certain way. And I thought, if this is true, hypothetically, if idol magic, if magical theory, if any of this stuff is true on any level, energetic exchange, sentient beings being created by the idol makers, if there's any truth to it, then it would also likely be a facet of the way that we interact with our phones. It does constitute, I think, a viable form of idol magic. There is some exchange. Like we do have, I mean, your phone could be a soul parasite. I don't know. But there's no opting out. The beheaded one says, reminds me of the Faust movie where he was making a golem to summon Mephisto. He was calling on Adonai, Elohim, and Jehovah as well. Yes, all of the medieval grimoires would command the spirits in the name of God and Jesus. They you think of them as like evil sorcerers worshiping the devil. No, their attitude was they're commanding these lower spirits under the authority of the higher spirits. But they recognize both. And John Dee is not a minor character on the world stage. He coined the phrase British Empire. He advised Gerardus Mercator. You know that whole picture, the picture of the 33-mile black rock? Again, 33 black rock. I just heard that. Oh, yeah, that's right. The Burning Man Festival. The Black Rock City, 33 Burning Man. This has been a repeated theme for some time, but there is supposedly, according to John Dee and Gerardus Mercator, a 33-mile circumference black rock at the North Pole. That comes from him. And the Western occultism in general, everything practiced by Wiccans, your Wiccan friends, if they're doing rituals, it came from John Dee. Not Aleister Crowley, who appropriated that stuff and brought a lot of it back. But the Faust character, that whole story is about he sells his soul with a contract. I mean, some people think that you have a contract before you enter this place. But my views aren't scientific, and I'm not trying to convince anybody that the way I look at things is accurate. I could be completely wrong, but I think it's kind of naive to look at the world without accounting for a structural evil. Like I think that it's built into the system. I don't have the numbers. I don't have an estimate. I suspect most people are more or less neutral. But I think some people are a little more tuned in to the light side, which favors sentience, peace, innocence, life. And then a corresponding number of people are tuned in to the material, the dark, death, murder, betrayal, suppression, ignorance, slavery. So I don't think everybody's good and evil. I'm not a moral relativist. I don't think that I'm capable of evil. I don't think, we're all evil and good and we got to overcome our shadows. I think that's crap. Because I don't have a shadow as dark as some other people's shadows. I'm simply not capable of some of the things that some people are. So I have a very, I'm not saying it's a dark view of the world, but it's appropriate, it's accurate. I have situational awareness. And I know we're surrounded by a bunch of psychos. And that's always been true. And I'm saying that it's not curable. I think it's part of the structure of this place. I think it's a covert war. I mean, think about the fact that the psychological warfare we're talking about is completely invisible. Nobody sees it. Nobody believes you. Nobody believes us. Oh, they're waging psy war on us. What's that? They believe in real war, but they don't believe in the invisible psychological war. They believe in the military-industrial complex. It's a real threat. They don't know about the psyop entertainment complex, the real purpose of entertainment and its entrainment with news. So given the level of ignorance about the nature of the prison, the invisible cage, this Truman Show, it makes perfect sense to me that there would be a deeper level to it, even more disguised and concealed. And isn't, Satan represented like sneaky, snake in the grass, not overt? It's like, hey guys, there's a conspiracy to enslave all minds and all souls, and they laugh at you. No, if that was true, they'd be telling us on the news. If that was true, we would all know about it. Oh, okay. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Oh, this is something that it's worth noting. There was a missing fertilizer story that's been floating around for a couple of years now. There's a key component in the Turner Diary story involving the theft and use of large quantities of fertilizer to build a bomb. In the novel, the protagonist, Earl Turner, and his underground white supremacist group, the Organization, construct a massive truck bomb using ammonium nitrate fertilizer mixed with fuel oil and dynamite. This fictional scenario from the Turner Diaries became the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing perpetrated by Timothy McVeigh, who mirrored the method in the novel, using a truck bomb, ammonium nitrate fertilizer, and fuel oil. So we have, it says here, quote, the missing fertilizer motif has become associated with the book's plot and its deadly real-life echo. Another reason to consider that the Oklahoma City bombing was just as fake as every other major terror attack. Somebody mentioned Richie from Boston, and I saw him on Twitter, and I thought I would help him out here. He said, someone explained to me how something 250,000 miles away is passing through the clouds. All wait. Hashtag Bible Earth. Hashtag moon. And it's a picture of the moon in the clouds. So he's asking, somebody explain to me how the moon is in the clouds. A lot of video game earthers, simulationists, I'm just going to call them video game characters. A lot of our video game character friends tell me that the sun and the moon are literally in the clouds. Now, here's why it doesn't make sense. I'll explain the optical illusion without talking about the translucence of clouds or the normal explanation. What would contradict the idea that it's in the clouds is that people hundreds of miles away are seeing the same sun. They're seeing the moon just as you are. The clouds over the heads of somebody 200 miles away are not the same clouds over your head. So is the sun or the moon in their clouds or your clouds? It can't be both. So we can go ahead and stop saying that the sun and the moon are literally in the clouds. We can stop. It's an optical illusion. I notice parallax gets people too. You're driving along and you see a plane and it looks like the plane's not moving because you're also moving, and it creates this illusion. But no, the moon is high above the clouds, and the evidence for this is that the clouds above your head are not above the clouds, above the heads of somebody hundreds of miles away who's observing the same phenomenon. So there's that, Richie from Boston. You can thank me or not. See, a lot of these people will ask questions as a way of making a proposition without saying they're proposing it. So they won't come out and say, hey guys, the moon is in the clouds right there. But they'll say, in the form of a question, explain to me how an object 250,000 miles away can be in the clouds. They frame it in such a way that they don't have to take accountability for it. What's Happening says, I think it's programming, turning people into animals and robots through harmful vices and propaganda. Yeah, see, I think that's part of it too. The worldview we have, nascentology, scientism, the scientific paradigm, it has us as latecomers. So here we are, evolved apes, big egos, exaggerated sense of self-importance. We're very grandiose, trying to understand the meaning of things. And it's grandiose because nothing means anything. We're latecomers to the scene. We evolved here by luck. It's only by happenstance that we got this far. and we're all going to exterminate ourselves before much longer, and then the Earth is going to get hit by a planet killer, and the universe is going to fold up on itself like a taco, and we're all dead anyway. Nothing means anything. Like, that's the scientific perspective on this. And I think that perspective is designed to take the soul and meaning out of the equation. So now man is just a bystander. We're on an object, and we're actually insignificant in the big cosmic scale of it all. We're really small. So we don't really matter. And we're just a blip on the radar at best. That's the perspective that we're told to accept. And it makes sense if you're blinkered by, well, if that's your entire frame of reference, it's internally consistent as a model. My problem with this proposition is that if there is a soul, if we do have transcendent awareness, if our consciousness is not merely a byproduct of our ape brains, then the model that we have is incomplete. Especially when the mind, which transcends the body in some of its aspects, seemingly has access to information that couldn't possibly be derived through its ape senses. So they want to convince you that you're just the beast, and that consciousness is derived, it's from the flesh, it's from the meat suit, it's of the world, and it's an illusion to think that you have a higher self. So I think that this whole system is designed essentially to get us to acquiesce to the idea that we're animals. And that's the basic tenet of Satanism. The philosophy of Satanism says that you have no spirit, that we're pure animal with an evolved intellect. So you're scientifically accurate to say that we're just a bunch of animals with no souls. Like, that is science. It's unscientific to say that we have souls, but what's more, it's unscientific to say our lives have meaning. My evidence for our life not necessarily having meaning, but for our consciousness being transcendent, is the interaction that we have with the world around us, which at times happens in a very cybernetic feed loop type of way, synchronicity in particular. The existence of synchronicities is automatically refuted to apophenia, mental illness. You're a broken machine, you're wrong, because you're accounting for yourself as a perceiver having something to do with the environment, with what is perceived. You're inserting yourself. Like, now you're not only a being with agency, but to suggest synchronicity is real suggests that we're actually part of the universe, not just on top of it, but that it's not necessarily an extension of us, but we're in a cybernetic system. And we're not limited merely by our biology. So it's very unscientific, my perspective. That's why I'm not a religious person, but I am convinced that we're not just animals. But if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm not really going to be upset about it. Lord, I want to say, I don't necessarily believe in death. So I don't know if that's problematic, but I think death is a hoax, probably the biggest hoax. Like, I know we die, but I don't think consciousness is limited by the body. And so again, I think that it makes sense what this person said. The programming is designed to relegate us down to the animal. Lord Laney says, I wouldn't say crater Earth, but so far the alignment of continents in moon deformation and landscape has the most visual evidence going for it that I've seen. Oh yeah, I concur. There's something up with the moon, and a certain configuration of craters, so-called craters, that happen to look suspiciously like the outline of the known continents. So this has led some to look at it as a projection. I mean, it looks solid. It interacts like one, shadows and everything, but whatever the case is, there has been this compelling case made by Vibes of Cosmos, Sturgio Studios 10, that if you were to imagine a projector beneath the Earth, and like the Batman signal, it's a spotlight with the bat on it, and it projects onto the cloud the bat in shadow, and then the white circle. Well, if you imagine the moon as a projection, and the projector is shining through, the continents would correspond to the bat. The land is blocking the light, so it creates a projection of a white spotlight with dark spots. So in this person's view, the craters are not craters, but the shadows of the continents. And what he has done is he has aligned the known continents with a certain cluster of craters. But what this suggests then is that we're on a much larger mass, because it only accounts for about a quarter of the craters on the face of the moon. So if Sergio Studios 10 is right, then whatever the moon is, if it is indeed some kind of a map, then we only inhabit a small portion of the land available to us. Good to know. Blap has brought in 5 wrenches, new edge designs, random guy on YouTube, Lean Dion, Harks, Hellbilly Homestead have all received the membership gift of Blue Wrench Lodge. Titanium blue wrenches for all. Jamarin May says, I know you used to work with mortuaries. Have you seen the new documentary series called The Mortician? I saw something about it where this guy was disposing of bodies in the retorts. I brought this up before. I didn't actually have a license to work the crematories, but I delivered, and I prepped for that. You know, you put the body in a disposable, like basically a cardboard box, and but I asked about this. You know, I ran it by someone, and they said, well, no, because everything that goes into it's accounted for, and there's a certain amount of fuel that they use. Like, it would not go undetected if you were using it to dispose more than you were reporting. I mean, maybe I'll have to watch the documentary, but I don't know. Possibly, I guess. I recently saw some movie. Oh, it was a new vampire, Diary of a Vampire, or Interview with the Vampire. Some clip where they had a crematory on site. I'll check it out. It seems morbid. I got out of that whole field, body transporting, because of a pretty bad couple of experiences. I just thought maybe it's bad for the mental health. And I thought this because of the people I interacted with. Not the ones who were doing the autopsies and the cutting, but some of the field officers. Like, they had this sense of humor, which I get, you're trying to make light of situations. But one of them in particular, I had a bad day because they told me, because I was on a 48-hour shift. I would show up at 8 in the morning on Saturday. I'd take the cargo van, and I had a beeper, and I would meet the field investigators, tag the bodies. They would sign off on it. I'd take it to the freezer or refrigerator and go back to my place and wait for the next one. Some weekends we would have 5 or 10 bodies. Sometimes it'd be 30 or more. And on this one particular weekend, it was like every 2 hours I had to pick someone up. And I picked up this one where he had crashed and his body flew out of his car, hit a rail, and really just contorted. It was a mess. And one of the police officers was they were joking about how it looked like this yoga position because the way his head, I mean, I'm sorry, it's so graphic, but they were joking about the pictures they had taken. They thought it was funny. Again, I didn't quite get it, and I was a little disturbed. And I remember I had blood down my pant leg. I wanted to change pants. I couldn't go back. So I'm dealing with this messy pants, and then I get back. I drop the body off. I get a call to go pick up someone at a house, a hospice situation. I'm taking this body out. Everything's fine. And the field investigator's like, hey, this morning you were late and you missed a good one. It was a guy who had shot himself. And he said part of the nose was stuck to the wall, like on the other side. He had to go back and get it. And so he actually takes a bag out of his pocket and he's like making these jokes about, or making light of it, I guess. And then he showed me, hey, did you see the pictures from that wreck? And I just thought, okay, these people are a little twisted. Maybe they've lost touch or something. And I just kind of quit that day. And it was also the lack of sleep for a couple of days nonstop, but not going home, changing, the guy's weird comments about the piece of the face that had blown off and then it was in the bag, and I'm trying to put some in the van, the family's over there. I'm like, okay, somebody's really... It's like that movie with Nick Cage, Driving Out the Dead, where he's like an ambulance driver that goes crazy. Thinkerbell says, I'm in this field, I hear you, it can attract pretty messed up people. There are good people, though, who care about the treatment. Oh, yeah, I say most people are. Most people are. But people react in different ways to extreme situations. Like, for example, I've seen people who, probably want to change the subject. I was just thinking about something. Some people don't have the stomach for it, and I totally respect that. Let's see here. Thinkerbell says that Lacey went back. Yeah, he went back to do the cleanup. Yeah, that was something too. When something would happen, it was often left to the families to clean up, so I used to go back and do it and bill the insurance. And sometimes it was just a matter of cutting out carpets, and other times it was a little more. But for the most part, they did leave that in the hands of the families. And so what I would try to do is I would try to get these gigs, and it became a very competitive field really quick. Like, I was out on the far west side of town at a trailer where someone had died and nobody noticed, and it was like in the middle of the summer. So you could hear the flies, because the whole thing was a significant decomposition on the face down on the floor. And I show up with like 5 other people. We're competing for the bid to clean it up. And I was like, where did all these people come from? Oh, I didn't know that. Van Gogh, Bringing Out the Dead, directed by Martin Scorsese, the same guy who directed Taxi Driver. Okay. All right, let's move on. I guess the only value in bringing this up, or maybe one particular reason here, is that when I first started paying attention, because Fakeologist said, what got you looking into these things? I was not really paying that much attention to it. But when I saw, and you could talk about the Sandy Hookers now, Alex Jones had that judgment overturned. He's not going to have to pay millions and millions of dollars. But when I started looking at the crisis actor thing, I was like, having spent quite a bit of time around the bereaved, and I did do a lot of, assisting funeral directors. One of my last gigs was in Ventura delivering flowers to the sites. So I was always around the bereaved. And when you look at the way that people act on TV in these events that are fake, it's really different from how people act in real life. And that stood out to me as, okay, these people are acting. Jamarin May says, sounds like a good premise for an A&E show called Body Wars. Yes. Well, there was this show once about jobs that people didn't want to do. Dirty jobs. I'm not sure what it was called. But it's a very easy field to get into as far as, picking up and moving bodies. It's one of those things you don't think about, unless you're in it. And the people that are in it that I met, generally speaking, were just normal people you'd never think. But the ones that I'm referring to in particular, it's different when you're dealing with funeral home work versus accident scene, murder scene, cleanup scene. Murder or homicide. It's very much different. Yeah, Dirty Jobs. That was the job. That was the movie. Most of the murders I picked up were, for the most part, it was gang related. As far as, let's see, there was a couple of others I can think of that probably weren't, but anyway, you're most likely to get killed by somebody you know. So if you're not in a gang, you're not going to get killed by a stranger. All the movies, it's always strangers. It's like, no, it's not going to be that. Okay, so what are we talking about tonight? We're talking about Saturday. Friday the 13th. This Friday. Friday the 13th, after the declaration of pandemic was a state of national emergency. So I'm looking, are we going to experience any parallels? And then we have 33 years since the LA riots. And let me bring this up again, because this is really strange. Jurassic Liars has been really the main person warning people. Like, I'm not warning anybody. I'm not telling people, hey, get out of Seattle. Stay away from the Space Needle. I'm not telling people. I'm not warning people. I'm not trying to reach people. But he has been warning people for a long time. And in that movie Final Destination, there's a character who warns people, and she stops the disaster. The actress that plays this prophet, her name is Gabriel Roseland, or Gayro. And Garo is Jurassic Liars. So I'm like, that's peculiar. Jamarin May says, what's the average bid on a body cleanup? Good question. It depends on a lot of factors, but I mean, I disposed of a small square of carpet that only had a small amount of blood and vomit, and it was like $1,200. Is the fastest. I mean, I made that money in a couple of hours. It wasn't a lot of work, but I didn't keep it all. So I made the $1,200, but then I also turned it over to the person who did the repainting. Neat Chapo says you're supposed to make us guess how many years since the LA riots. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there have been a fair number of conspicuous 33s on the stage out there in LA. And look, people riot, people do protest, but there is quite a bit of room here for being critical. They can stage people getting hit by cars. And listen to this. This is hilarious and very typical. Here's ABC News, and they're talking about what's happening in Los Angeles. And he literally says this. He says, mostly peaceful protests. It's just a bunch of people having fun watching cars burn.
Large group of people. It could turn very volatile if you move law enforcement in there in the wrong way and turn what is just a bunch of people having fun watching cars burn into.
This is the media. See, this is why I say that you can only reach people on the right side of the political horseshoe. The left is, so like, Big Brother's a narcissist. And in this bifurcated war, this political horseshoe, the right wing is the scapegoat from the perspective of media. They're always wrong. They're conspiracy theorists. They're hateful and racist. And the left is on the side of media. They're what you would call the golden child. What I mean by this is that the narcissistic personality generally splits people into can do no wrong, can do no right, and it uses favoritism to set them against each other, to control them. And I've described Big Brother as a narcissist for some time for this reason. And so here you have the left burning cars, and Big Brother just says, just a bunch of people having fun watching cars burn. They would not have said this if this were MAGA.
Large group of people. It could turn very volatile if you move law enforcement in there in the wrong way and turn what is just a bunch of people having fun watching cars burn into a massive confrontation and altercation between officers.
So I asked Grok, I said, Grok, could you provide me an image of people having fun watching cars burn? And so Twitter, if you notice it's integrated with Grok, you can just click the button. And so here's a group of people, families, just sitting around watching cars burn, having fun. This is what's happening in Los Angeles. Hark says, anyone out in LA can confirm it's real. Right. Well, I'm not saying it's fake. I'm saying it's staged, it's provoked, it's guided, it's steered. And any major thing that happens, like you might have a bunch of useful idiots, useful stooges, a bunch of triggered normies who get out onto the streets, sure. But if something significant happens, like let's say Patriot Front shows up and mows down a crowd. That's fake. Like, just as a rule, if it's a psyop that drives the narrative forward and it's been preceded by copious predictive programming, you can't assume it to be real just because there's a mix here as the public gets involved. Like 2020, for example, we were all involved. We all had to participate in that alternate reality game, believers or not. So another thing too, LA burned at the beginning of the year. Okay, so if you recall, we had at the end of the year, Homestead. The Homestead trailer was out, and I said, look, LA gets nuked. So here we are. After the new year, LA's on fire. And I'm like, well, it's like Homestead. And they're saying, scientists saying it's getting nuclear. They're comparing it to the nuke. Los Angeles got Hiroshima'd, like Nagasaki, Hiroshima. Trump said that. Jay Leno said that. They compared it to the nuke. So we saw that movie trailer as an indicator of what was to come, and look what happened. So Los Angeles was essentially, burning. And then we had the boat with the Mexican flag hitting the Brooklyn Bridge. And now we have this event happening. So there seems to be a trajectory here. But the idea of Los Angeles burning and these riots being organic is just ridiculous. Like, this is obviously staged. It's tracking with the movies, the chaos that we're seeing right now. So according to the movie Mountainhead, let's say Mountainhead, it's about generative AI, societal chaos, but primarily driven by Musk. That is X. And the radical ideology that has caused the right wing to fester in this way and to be empowered in this way, enabled by Trump, it's going to be blamed on X. So the predictive programming in the movie said LA was going to get it, but the more recent one, Mountainhead, shows the whole world plunges into chaos. Mountainhead is ubiquitous chaos, so it looks like 6/14 on Saturday, Trump's birthday, military parade, there's going to be nationwide day of defiance. Let's see what else we have. Jamarian says, stimmy checks incoming. Right. Well, I was thinking about this. Martial law. How would they lock people down this time? It wouldn't be the same thing as last time. No one would fall for it. But how would they keep people down? Because people would continue to go out. The only way I could see it working is Fallout. And Oppenheimer's, you got Christopher Nolan, Jonathan Nolan, Oppenheimer, and Fallout. Fallout would be consistent with what we have been seeing. High altitude detonation, blackouts, power outages, and all they have to do is say, there's fallout, the wind's carrying it, it's not safe to go out, it's radioactive waste, you'll die, stay home. And there have already been PSAs, like in New York, they had that PSA a couple years ago, they said, go into your house, don't stay outside. I'm like, what about the homeless people? But they say, go into your house, if you have a basement, go in the basement, get away from everything, center of the house, and listen to the media. It's like H.G. Wells, War of the Worlds. Just gather around, just listen to the emergency broadcast and follow orders, follow instructions. Plug into the matrix. You know how we're always talking about our feeds? Like, what's on your feed, going through my feed? When I hear people say feed, I think of the feeding tube in the mouth of the shaved, pale, fetal positioned matrix pod dwellers. You know, they're plugged into the hose with their goo, their feed. What's in your feed? Ground footage shows motorcycles ramming into LAPD officers during peaceful protest, and the motorcyclist is wearing a green jersey with a 33 on it. Again, what does that mean? Well, just like with the van running those people in the UK a few weeks ago, 33 on the van. I don't know. Seems like there's a pattern. 33 is code, order out of chaos. It's the motto of the 33rd degree. Jamarian May says, in Silo, they tell everyone outside the air is pure poison. Yeah, there's been some buildup for something in the air. There's been quite a lot, and this is consistent with the nuke thing, but I pointed out how Marilyn Manson's on tour, and his album is One Assassination Under God, which I consider programming material. The fact that this comes out in the wake of Butler and the subsequent attack or a thwarted assassination attempt. But in his tour, One Assassination Under God, he closes with Coma White, which has the video where he plays JFK getting killed. Then he comes out with this cover of Phil Collins' Something in the Air. And when I saw that, I thought, okay, well, if he's going viral for that, that phrase is likely a component in this meta script, just as much as his references to an assassination. And the conspicuous closing song, which had a video that was actually suppressed on MTV. It was pulled. And they pulled the video because it alluded to JFK Jr. This is weird, but this shows you how far back he goes in this meta script involvement. Like a lot of these artists, their work is co-opted to bolster the psyops. Well, the story is Coma White, the video is he's JFK and he's also the second coming of Christ. So when he dies, it means that Christ has been killed again. And so the video is all about mourning the death of Christ. But the song is hopeful in some sense because there's going to be President White, the third Jesus. So the third Jesus would obviously be the son of JFK if JFK is the second Jesus. So this is interesting because this is what QAnon believes. But when this video came out, it was right as JFK Jr.'s death was being reported. And they're like, okay. So again, that video comes out concurrent with JFK's death on 7/16. JFK Jr. The same date that Eyes Wide Shut was released, by the way, fits a pattern. There's these connections with Kennedy and Kubrick films going back to 11/22/63 when Dr. Strangelove was screening. And I'm still waiting for that 16-minute homemade video where Jackie Kennedy simulated the assassination of JFK with Heinz 57 ketchup and the help of the Secret Service. That was 2 months before he was assassinated. They reenacted it. They made a movie. That information was only released last November. Some Vanity Fair reporter covered it. And he shared some screen caps that were eerily similar to the shot of the Ford Lincoln from the Zapruder film. Very, very close. Enoch says, the Manson was in the God as a Weapon music video 2 weeks ago. It shows only shots of west-facing U.S. coast getting destroyed by blasts from God. I will have to see that. Let me take a look. God as a Weapon music vid. I'm not going to play it right now because of copyright reasons, but I'll look into it. See, Marilyn Manson, his name, obviously Charles Manson, but Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe is another world stage character associated with JFK, and she died on 8/4, which is a very significant date. Her body was found on 8/5. Jamarian May says, I know you cover the story about how the CIA has declared the UFO thing a fake, but since when do we trust what the government actually tells us? Well, this was released in a documentary called Mirageman, where the individual who was popularizing a lot of these ideas about underground military bases, alien abductions, he was a local here who lived by Kirtland Air Force Base. And they admitted that they lied to him, and he didn't believe that they were lying when they told him the truth, and he was committed. But since when do we believe what they actually tell us? I never believed him in the first place. I knew it was a lie, and I don't believe them. Because they're saying that they lied about aliens to cover up secret weapons. No, I believe they lied about aliens, but it's not to cover up secret weapons. I think they lied about aliens because aliens are part of their sci-fi paradigm. West Coast, it's exactly 216 seconds long. Okay, I'll take a look at that. Now we're going to be live on June 11th in the morning and early afternoon. And we're just going to examine the situation as it evolves. Okay, here we go. God is a weapon. A week ago. Falling in reverse. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put this music video on, but I'm not going to play the sound. I'm just going to look at some of the visuals. Because it ties into one assassination under God. And, of course, something in the air. So this may add into it. And maybe it's significant that he was at Dawn Day 2 with Ye when they did that listening party. Highly ritualistic event on 2/22/2022. And there's a few other things that stand out about him that are worth bringing up. Because that was the same year that the main character in Westworld, Rachel Woods, she came out with this documentary about how she was tormented as Marilyn Manson's girlfriend many years before. So she described her torment in this documentary, and she created this thing called like the Phoenix Bill, some Phoenix Project, which is all about extending the statute of limitations for people claiming abuse in relationships. So here we have this character. She's the main character in Westworld. She's Dolores. So Dolores is this Alice in Wonderland like character. So Dolores is a sim in Westworld, and she's tormented by the man in black who threatens to kill her father all the time. Every day it resets. And I equated this here to Hades and Persephone, the man in black, or like the Mad Hatter and Ellis, or Oz and Dorothy. So Dolores is like Dorothy, is like Ellis. It's similar dynamic. The underworld, Westworld, Oz, Wonderland, these are analogous constructs. So here you have the story of this kidnapped Persephone and Hades.
Thank you for feeding the Kraken Big Hair Tsunami. The IPS thanks you for your support and participation.
Yeah, thank you very much, Big Hair Tsunami. Appreciate the support and participation here. So anyway, Westworld protagonist against the man in black. Well, this actress comes out with a documentary, and in this documentary, which I think she's 33 at the time she releases it, it's 113 minutes long. It's all kinds of code. But the first part of it is called Don't Fall. Well, Persephone goes into the underworld. She falls, into the underworld at the end of summer, so when it hits fall. So what's interesting here is that the first part of her documentary is describing how she was at a party and she's looking over a balcony, and that's when she met Marilyn Manson. He walks up behind her and he whispers, "Don't fall." So I'm thinking this has got to be code for Persephone and Hades, because he's another man in black. So the man in black with a black rimmed hat, same exact kind of wardrobe that Marilyn Manson wears. So he started a conversation with her and said, "I want you to help me with a script called Alice in Wonderland." So immediately, from the beginning of the relationship, Don't Fall, looking over a precipice, Alice in Wonderland, again, Hades and Persephone, the kidnapping into this underworld where she's tormented with fear, Wizard of Oz, until she overcomes it. Same thing with Westworld. She has to overcome this person to break out of Westworld. So my point being, he was already being associated with this Hades archetype, man in black archetype. And then I see him at Dawn Day 2 on 2/22/2022, which again, Return of Pluto. Pluto is Hades. lord of the underworld. So he's this Pluto-like character at that particular event. So that event is about the death of America, the death of the empire, the sinking of the West, the Kraken being released. And I think the Kraken in 2022 was brought up in so many ways, it was just ridiculous. But again, it's Hades that releases the Kraken. Dolores means pain. Okay, I didn't know that. But Dorothy, Dolores, Ellis, it's a certain repeated type of character in many of these different movies where even Gabby Petito and Brian Landry, if you look at that story, she is represented visually, and I have a separate, I'll do this one for members as well. I've been working on this one based on the Netflix documentary on Gabby Petito. Gabby Petito, by the way, her brother and I think her sister, her siblings were in a Sandy Hook video. Just a heads up. A Sandy Hook music video inspired by the victims and performed by the Sandy Hookers or some, it's just like overlapping groups of PSYOP actors. But visually, she's always being represented as Virgo, posing in front of a mural with wings and 1 foot out, just like Virgo. Virgo is essentially the basis, again, for Persephone. There's this overlapping here. And the capturing of the spring maiden, taking her into the underworld, that's kind of the story here. And Gabby Petito's body was found just as we hit the autumn equinox, which is when Persephone goes into the underworld. But that particular story, the story of Persephone, has great significance to the secret societies. It's a big part of their rituals. Now, this 2-2 thing is incredible. It's crazy. There was something else that happened on the second day. So on 2/2/2022, there was a 22-year-old who was in the news. He was killed by the cops in the Twin Cities. So again, twin, two. Again, this was all just sort of like redundant. But on the second day of February 2022, a 22-year-old named Amir Locke is killed by the cops. Now think of the name. The cops are executing a no-knock warrant. His name is Locke. So no-knock warrant. The cops go in, shoot the wrong guy. His name is Amir. And they shoot him, and I looked at the video, the timestamp, they shoot him at 6:48 a.m. And I'm like, wait, 6:48 a.m. is a mirror of 8:46. And we were just noticing all these 846s attached to police killing or martyring blacks in ways that feed into this growing narrative of the West being built upon oppression, systemic racism. But again, the house that they burned, that Ye burned, symbolizes the West. The chapel in Westworld, the West. The house in Rust, where Alec Baldwin shot the guy with Trump's birthday, it represents the West. Again, the 614, it has with a protest against Trump. This is all very much aligning, but let's watch this really quick here. God is a weapon. This video was created using tools and is a tribute to the artist. AI music video 7 days ago. So it may not be an official release, but that doesn't necessarily make a difference. To me, when I look at something, it's really about the audience and the reach. It's only predictive programming if it's part of one of these big propaganda vectors, and it's target marketed propaganda. Just in case people have misconceptions, somebody said, I wrote this article that seemed to foreshadow what happened. I'm like, well, you're not in front of the multitudes. You're not in a position to be influencing people with this particular meme. You're not added to the body of content that forms the zeitgeist. Hark says that series Sharp Objects had lots of Persephone overtones. 91 Oki says Eminem, the biggest psyop against white people. I don't know what that means, but I do know that Eminem has consistently been on the side of the psyop entertainment complex. He did a music video about the Stephen Paddock. And, you know, the name Paddock, by the way, Paddock is like a sheep pen, and he was shooting people in the sheep pen. But he did a music video that, you know, if David Hogg wrote rap lyrics, you know, it was like pretty much anti-gun. But a lot of these rappers and artists are, like Marilyn Manson, for example, these musicians, I don't think of them as being insiders necessarily to how things work. I think that would work against their interests. But I do think that they are essentially intelligence agents, assets. Mike Myers, CIA, wasn't that just recently brought up? Austin Powers. But you can see artists whose work is consistently used to bolster the incoming psyops, to provide the soundtracks, the visuals. And next, that's not the right video. I didn't think so. I'll find it later, but I'll go over it tonight. God is a weapon. If you want to provide a link, it'd be easier, because there's always tomorrow. We have until the 11th. Hark says, so 611 will likely be out west. Well, the whole point of this analysis here is that we have been following this growing body of content in a build-up towards a domestic violent extremist 9/11-like event. And the Space Needle has been a consistent facet in all of the programming. And it's deep, it's pervasive, and it's very consistent. Like here's an example. I brought this up yesterday. The film How It Ends. How It Ends, released on 7/13, Trump Day. Seismic event on the West Coast disrupts electrical power and telecommunication. Again, takes place Seattle. 7/13, not only Trump's head wound day, but the day of the two significant blackouts in Manhattan, 7/13, 1977, 7/13, 2019, 42 years apart to the day, 42nd Street on, people put into the dark. Son of Sam was active during the 77 blackouts. And what's interesting about this is the movie SOS, Son of Sam, was directed by Spike Lee. And Spike Lee, in my opinion, directed the George Floyd, Derek Chauvin psyop. And Spike Lee also directed Black Klansman, I watched recently, which tied into Charlottesville, America First, Nick Fuentes, the American right wing. But Spike Lee directed this movie about this particular blackout, which I think is significant because the date, 7/13, How It Ends. 7/13 is the Trump shooting date, but also this date, it's the date of Caesar's birth. We talked about this before, but these numbers are telling something in the code. It's actually 113 days from 11/3. Godzilla's birthday, the One World Tower's birthday. But what's with all the hitting of Seattle in the movie, says Violet Pangon. Exactly. So just to kind of reiterate from yesterday, if we knew in 2000 what we know now, we would have been waiting for 9/11. We would have been waiting for the next fake event to put a plot twist into the world stage script, a generational psyop. And we've been vindicated. We're not resting our entire, like, oh, if nothing happens on 6/11, might as well just quit. We're done. We've been contradicted. No, I wish it were that simple. It's not even close to being like that. But it would be off-brand for them not to use the date that they've advertised so consistently. And this story that has been built up is a construct that's intentionally designed to get you to interpret the event in a very specific way. But why Seattle? What is the significance of Seattle itself? Well, New York is Babylon. Look at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine with New York being destroyed. New York is Megalon in Megalopolis. Make Rome great again. It's Rome falling. So New York is described as, it represents Rome, and we're the fall of Rome or Babylon. And so Seattle, the tower, is the Tower of Babylon. It corresponds to that in a lot of ways. One, Dr. Evil, Nimrod, Jeff Bezos. There's this overlapping significance of Bezos and Dr. Evil is one of the same, but Jeff Bezos, his archetype, he represents Nimrod, the builder of the Tower of Babel. In fact, the Helix building has been compared to that already. But Dr. Evil's headquarters is in the Space Needle. The Space Needle is a tower that goes to heaven, as in it's a UFO, and it's an obelisk. Space is the new heaven. It represents, in that sense, the mission of man as one language from earth, traveling to the heavens together, reaching the heavens, transgressing into the higher realm against the wishes of God, and because of their hubris, they're going to get knocked down. But this is analogous to the One World Trade Tower as far as its meaning. And the One World Trade Tower's connection with the Tower of Babel concept, a lot of it goes to the number 1776, its height. But even its architecture, if you get up close to it, and I'll show you here on the screen, One World Trade Tower, which again opened on 11/3. When you look up pictures of it, and you get kind of close to it, because from further back it looks like a big syringe. It looks like a big syringe, which I think is by design, because it was the needle, the syringe that was part of this one world unity that they created, getting us all on the same sheet. One, we're united in this one big psyop. Okay, but you get up close to it. Here's a great example. It looks like the pyramid with the capstone on top. Freedom Tower. And by the way, there was a project called they were going to call it the One World Phoenix. They were going to call it the Phoenix Tower. Trump was a part of that plan, that suggestion. It didn't actually happen, but I thought that was probably too blatant. From this angle, it makes it look like the pyramid on the dollar bill, which has the 1776 on the bottom, America's birth. But if you look at the Masonic lore, they have this thing called the Year of Light. So in 1776, it was 5776 on the Masonic calendar. 5776 is the height of the pyramid in Giza in inches. So now you have the pyramid, 1776 AD, America's construction begins, America's birth, but also 1776 AL, this is a Year of Light thing, when the Tower of Babel's construction begins. So you have a correlation between the building of the Tower of Babel and the founding of America, the number 1776, and the height of the One World Trade Tower corresponding to this. And again, New York as Babylon. But it would be redundant to use it as a ground zero again. And I think they're using the Space Needle to be the analogous symbol. And it's a more updated version anyway. Another reason why Seattle, it has to do with the sea, some kind of a sea attack, and the symbol of the West. So the West sinking. This is a story that's been told over subsequent psyops, and Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis really sums it up pretty well at the beginning when he describes how empires fall. But the sinking of the Titanic, the sinking of the Twin Towers, this is part of a long-term story that's unfolding about the fall of the West. But Francis Ford Coppola even said in an interview that his movie was about, this is about what's going to happen soon. But I would contend here that the Tower of Babel as a symbol is embodied in the One World Trade Tower, the Space Needle, and specifically the ISS, which has all the nations in this unity, this harmony above, and it's in the heavens. So it's like the completion. And on 119, significant number, significant date, ties into Donnie Darko, same theme, planes falling from the sky. But that was the date the movie ISS came out, where the world's getting nuked and Russia and America are at war, and the Russians and the Americans are fighting on the space station to see who's going to control it, and the space station falls in that movie, burns up. Violet Pangon says, Ankara Space Needle 11-3, then this year, Final Destination. Yeah, we talked about this today in a discussion. We were like, yeah, on 11/3/2019, we were watching the Space Needle because we've been following this story for some time. And strangely enough, a different Space Needle burned. It was in Turkey. So wrong one, guys. Couldn't have been a coincidence, in my opinion. I'm not saying they diverted their plan, but one of the hallmarks of this script is that there's foreshadowing to the day. So, every year that Jurassic Liars has been looking at 8/4 or 6/11, something has happened. Like there was some union leader, president of a union named Trumpka. So President Trumpka dies, and it's reported on 8/5. So it's like, wait a minute here. Every year, there seems to be something moving the needle forward a little bit. Jamarian May says, how does Gabby Giffords tie into the PSYOP? I think it has to do with the fact that she was, shot on Elvis's birthday. She dies. Obama visits her. She comes back from the dead and says, fight, fight, fight. Trump gets shot in the head. Fight, fight, fight. So there's some headshot stuff. But Gabby Giffords is also married to a former astronaut and now politician. That'd be Mark Kelly. Scott Kelly. One of the twins had the overview effect, and he rose above politics. The other one didn't get that effect, and he came down and became a Democrat senator. But it shows you something here. Fake shooting, fake space, fake politics. It's like, oh, this guy's behind the scenes in a number of these departments. It just speaks to the integration of the PSYOP entertainment complex and all of its various facets and agendas. I feel like we didn't cover everything, but there's going to be a lot more to talk about. I'm just trying to be very clear about where we're coming from, what we're saying, what we're not saying, why we are saying the things that we are, and what our claims really are. I'm trying to be as clear as I can here. I'm just pointing out that things have been escalating right on track with what we would expect. Here's Trump saying about a civil war.
A civil war on the streets of America.
No, it's just the opposite. I don't want a civil war. Civil war would happen if you left it to people like him. And I liked him. I always got along with him. Never had a problem with him. But he's grossly incompetent.
Anyway, this is just Trump talking about arresting a mayor and a governor. Listen to this. He says, if they spit, we will hit. This is a statement from the President of the United States concerning the riots in Los Angeles inspired by New Scum. The insurrectionists have a tendency to spit in the face of National Guardsmen and women. The patriots are told to accept this. But not in the Trump administration. If they spit, we will hit. And I promise you they will be hit harder than they've ever been hit before. Such disrespect will not be tolerated. I wonder what Witsit Spitsit thinks. If he's read this. He's kind of disappeared. Did they leave him in Antarctica? What happened to Witsit Vapsit? Or Spitsit? If you don't know about that, it's old news. I mean, what's kind of funny is I saw some of these gloobers putting together a collection of all of Witsit's mugshots, and they were making these like mock collector trading cards. Trump says, arrest the people in face masks now. So it's like, if we're having 2020 all over again, a summer of love 2.0, Trump is not taking this one sitting down like he did the last one. I mean, they were allowed to go run amok. Here's a time lapse of the smoke blanketing downtown Los Angeles. Looks pretty bad. Burning cars. But now, one more point before I go. When you see burning cars or mostly peaceful brick throwings or anything at all, you can't assume it's live or it's real. You can only assume, well, you can't, rather. You have to be aware that there's one AI. There's some guy making videos where Godzilla is tearing up Los Angeles, mixing it in with AI, and it looks real. Like, I almost believed in it. But you also have to keep in mind, people are taking videos from 2020 and recycling it and getting traction. So you can't be an auto believer, especially at times like this. Violet says, what time was Trump shot? Trump was shot at 6:11 p.m. and 33 seconds. And 84 days later, at 6:11, they had a moment of silence. And some male saying Ave Maria, which was sung by the Riddler, when Batman said, what did you do? And on 11/6, Gotham's underwater. But yes, Trump was shot at 6:11 p.m. And the right wing was connecting this to the armor of God, Ephesians 6:11. And 6:11 has been a repeated number with them for a long time. And they even mention this. Like, oh yeah, armor of God. Here's a journalist getting shot by a rubber bullet. I don't have a problem with it at all for some reason. I don't think anybody did. Did anybody have a problem with this?
Back firing rubber bullets at protesters, moving them on through the heart of LA.
Salty Siren says it's the summer of hate. Yeah, we had summer of love. This might be summer of hate. Greta Thunberg has been kidnapped. She was on a flotilla. She went from protesting climate change to protesting against Israel. It's the same struggle. Same thing. You know, we have the Free Palestine people shooting Jews. Now they're waving Mexican flags. The political horseshoe is structured in this way. If you're on the same on one issue, you're going to be aligned with people on everything else. These are belief clusters. That's why I stay out of it. You know, these people who are like the J-Pill people, the Nick Fuentes people, like, you might say, well, I'm just against this. Well, I'm sorry, but that lumps you in with a lot of other things. So if you're against this, then you're also this, this, and this. These belief clusters matter. That's why I'm not a one-issue person. I'm like, sorry, I'm anti-vax. Because if I took your side, now I'm in league with a bunch of chemtrail alarmists and worse. Jamarian May, oh yeah, Donut Factory says, I made the Godzilla AI video. Yeah, well, it's really well done. And what's funny is, people are looking at your video and they're crying about it. Like, oh, we got to censor this guy. And that's the agenda. See, the fact is, we have been deep faked long before CGI. They use lies, movie magic, and propaganda. We've always been deep faked. So it's not new. But they're using this new stuff to convince people to acquiesce to more censorship and regulation. And people are going along with it. Yeah, Donut is a highly recommended X channel. If you follow me on X, I retweet channels quite a lot. It's not always an endorsement, but in this case, it is. So here is Donut, and I'll put a link in the chat if you want to subscribe. If you want to see some of these Godzilla deepfakes. Look, I started believing in whale-sized clownfish until I was corrected, all as the result of highly sophisticated deepfakes. I think it's funny that people are getting mad about it. It's like you're not taking it seriously enough. You know, in the movie The Village, the only people that weren't brainwashed by the elites, by the elders wearing monster costumes. There were 3 people. One of them was the character that just laughed at it all. He wasn't brainwashable because he thought it was funny. The other one was visually impaired, and the other one was just rebellious and anti-authoritarian. Anti-authority. Yeah, here you go. This is Godzilla. It says this escalated very quickly. So here you have the LA riots happening. And there's Godzilla taking down bridges. Anyway, fantastic work. And I said this like more than a year ago. I said, if they can put Godzilla into the mainstream news, rising up out of the ocean, the public will believe Godzilla is real. Like it's like that. And what you have done here is exactly what the show Mountainhead is about. The general public gets their hand on the ability to real-time create convincing deepfakes, and it's going to cause chaos. And you have created a bit of chaos here. Not to mention, like this person said, this channel needs to be taken down because it's a bunch of lies and meant to keep us separated. Look, if that was the standard, the whole media would have been taken down a long time ago. I promise you this guy is being paid by the same people he's talking about 100%. This one's pretty good. But this is just the beginning. This is going to be
the federal government is moving to take over the California National Guard and deploy 2,000 soldiers. That move is purposefully inflammatory and will only escalate tensions. So the FBI is actually looking.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the summer of deepfakes, summer of love 2.0 or summer of hate, whatever it is. It's going to be the summer of deepfakes. Anyway, thanks for joining. I have to go. I'm running a little late. This is Chief Crow. Where's the curve?
So cool.